Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Mark Ettensohn. Welcome to Heal NPD. Most of us have learned to show versions of ourselves that are appropriate to specific situations. We behave professionally at work, and we let our hair down at parties, etc. Often that's just healthy adaptation. But for those raised in narcissogenic environments, these performances can become something more fixed and constraining, a survival strategy known as the false self. Contrary to popular belief, the false self isn't about consciously manipulating other people. It represents a survival strategy. It's a version of the self that's built to fit expectations that once felt non-negotiable, expectations that defined early relationships with caregivers. A patient once described their experience of going to church as a young child. There was a very strong expectation that they would sit nicely, hands folded in their lap, a look of optimism and faithfulness adorning their face. The expectation wasn't just that they would behave in a certain way. It was also that they would feel a certain way. Solemn, obedient, good. The expectation was that they would reflect what their parents wanted to see in them. Now, it isn't at all unusual for parents to want their kids to behave at church. But most kids will still wiggle in their seats, get distracted or visibly bored. Some need a toy or book to entertain them. That's because it isn't natural for a young child to hold still for an hour, focused intently on what a bunch of grown-ups are saying to each other. To accomplish that, most children would need to develop precocious self-monitoring abilities, the kind that adults eventually acquire as they grow through adolescence. But this patient had developed them at age 5 or 6. And it wasn't just because of how they were expected to reflect their parents' wishes at church. This patient's whole childhood was marked by the persistent need to be, quote, good. This requirement was communicated in thousands of little ways and paired with a traumatic emotional neglect and parental disinterest in how the patient actually felt. The message was, you feel how we want you to feel, and that's what makes us love you. Church was just a place where this false self was most acutely actualized, where the precocious self-monitoring, the overemphasis on being good, and the clear prioritization of appearances over feelings came together in an indelible mandate to perform. These kinds of experiences are common for individuals with pathological narcissism and NPD. Narcissogenic environments prize appearances over feelings, alignment with parental expectations over the child's freedom to discover their authentic feelings and perspectives on their own terms. They encourage the development of precocious self-monitoring because that's what's required for a child to intercept their impulses, inhibit them before they surface, and replace them with something that will instead meet approval. I think perhaps Donald Winnicott said it best. He said, "The mother gazes at the baby in her arms, and the baby gazes at his mother's face and finds himself therein, provided that the mother is really looking at the unique, small, helpless being and not projecting her own expectations, fears, and plans for the child. In that case, the child would find not himself in his mother's face, but rather the mother's own projections. And this child would remain without a mirror, and for the rest of his life would seek this mirror in vain." Although Winnicott coined the term false self, he wasn't speaking specifically about pathological narcissism. Nevertheless, the term has come to be most frequently paired with narcissistic adaptations. Here's the thing. The child learns to self-monitor and self-censor very early. So early, in fact, that it becomes automatic. I've worked with many individuals who had no idea that they were operating from within a false self. So how can you tell? Well, the best way is to go to therapy. But here are some other signs that you might notice when you reflect on your experience. One clue is exhaustion. I'm not talking about the kind of tiredness you might feel after a busy day. I'm talking about the fatigue that comes from constant performance, always being on. of having to maintain something that never feels quite natural. It might show up as chronic self-monitoring, trying to get everything just right, trying to live up to an image of how you're supposed to behave, think, or feel. These feelings come from trying to align yourself with something called an ego ideal. For the patient I discussed earlier, this was the feeling of being, quote, good. And what good really meant was a feeling of being the sort of person that this individual's mother would admire. Another clue is the absence of internal struggle, contradiction, or messy, ambiguous feelings. False self-experience is often organized around coherence, consistency, and control. This is who I am, this is what I believe, this is how I'm supposed to behave. But authentic feelings are messier than that. If there's no room for ambivalence, no space for shifting feelings, there may be a performance underway. You might also notice a subtle contempt for vulnerability. The false self is frequently built around a fantasy of self-sufficiency. It abhors messy feelings like need, dependency, or insecurity. The kinds of feelings that might make a person need someone else's involvement to resolve or help them feel better. Finally, you might notice deep feelings of isolation. The self-monitoring and self-censoring that the false self requires creates a gap between what's real inside and what it seems that others need you to be in order to love or accept you. That disparity creates an undeniable sense that the self isn't really loved, or perhaps isn't even known. I've heard from many patients that the isolation they feel penetrates beyond the level of emotions. It's existential. To be clear, there's nothing inherently bad about having made any of these adaptations. Children who have to adapt in order to be loved do the best they can with what they have. The work now is noticing. When you feel most unlike yourself, most drained, most disconnected, pause and ask, who am I being right now? And who taught me that I needed to be or feel this way in order to be good? The goal isn't to destroy the false self. It's to begin to open up more space for what precedes it. While the self-monitoring and censoring may at this point be automatic, that doesn't mean that they need to be inevitable. The more awareness we can bring to the performative nature of false self-experience, the more space we create for something real to emerge. Okay, so that's it for today. Until next time, take good care.